I didn't find out my relationship was over during an argument. I found out when I realized someone I loved was capable of quiet cruelty. It started on a random weekday evening when I unlocked my apartment and felt that strange kind of silence that feels wrong. Not peaceful, empty. His shoes were gone. His laptop wasn't on the table where he usually worked. My stomach tightened for no clear reason. I told myself not to overthink it. I went to the bathroom to wash my hands, already replaying excuses in my head. Maybe he ran an errand, maybe traffic. Then I noticed the trash bag wasn't tied the way I usually do it. It was loose, sloppy, like someone rushed. I don't know why I looked inside. I just did. Something shifted. A faint movement. Barely there, my heart dropped before my brain caught up. I pulled the bag open, and there it was. The small house gecko that had lived with me longer than any boyfriend. Not moving much. Hurt badly, tail gone. Alive, but only technically. My hands started shaking. I remember saying no out loud, like that could undo what I was seeing. I wrapped him carefully in a towel and drove to the emergency clinic faster than I should have. Every red light felt personal. Every second felt stolen. The vet didn't need long. He said reptiles hide pain well, but this one had nothing left to hide. They gave him medication, told me I could stay. So I sat there. Quiet room. Bright lights. A creature that trusted my home as a safe place, fading in my hands. I kept thinking about how long he must have suffered, about how he didn't die right away, about how someone chose to leave him like that. 2 hours later, it was over. I didn't cry at first. I felt hollow, cleaned out, like something important had been removed, and nobody bothered to tell me. Then my phone buzzed. It was him. He sounded casual. Too casual. Asked if I was home yet. That's when the anger finally arrived, sharp and sudden. I asked him where he'd been. He hesitated. Just a second, but it was enough. When I told him what I found, his explanations tripped over each other. He said maybe it was an accident. Maybe he stepped on it. Maybe it crawled somewhere it shouldn't have. Every sentence contradicted the last. Nothing landed. Nothing sounded true. What stuck with me wasn't what he said. It was what he didn't say. No real shock. No panic. No guilt that made sense for someone who knew how much that little creature mattered to me. I realized something then. This wasn't about a gecko. It was about boundaries I had drawn clearly and calmly long before. It was about respect, about empathy, about how someone behaves when they think no one is watching. I told him not to come back. He laughed at first, thought I was emotional, thought I'd cool off. I didn't. That night, I changed the door code, packed his things into boxes, left them outside. By morning, he was blocked everywhere. No speeches, no long explanations. I was done. The reactions came fast after that. Friends told me I went too far. Relatives said I chose an animal over a man. Someone actually used the word dramatic, even my mother's side, and said relationships are about compromise. Here's the thing. Compromise doesn't include cruelty. And love doesn't look like ignoring suffering you caused or allowed anyone who can harm a harmless creature, especially one they were explicitly told to protect. Isn't someone I trust with my heart, my home, or my future. The issue wasn't what he hurt. It was how easily he dismissed it afterward. I still miss that little gecko sometimes. I still check the bathroom wall out of habit. But I don't miss the man, because losing someone who showed you who they really are isn't a loss at all. It's clarity, so no. I'm not the butthole. I just chose to believe what I saw. The room was warm, loud, and crowded in that very specific way. Family gatherings always are. Toys scattered on the floor, plates half cleared. Everyone talking over each other. And then, out of nowhere, the tension snapped into place. It started harmlessly. Someone mentioned a teenager heading off to college. That turned into a discussion about how schools aren't just about classes anymore. Connections matter. Who you meet can shape your entire career. I nodded along, half distracted by my toddler, and casually mentioned how my first serious job came from a shared alma mater with an interviewer. I barely finished the sentence when it happened. A sharp interruption. A smirk, the kind of comment that pretends to be a joke but lands like a jab. Something about my university not being the real one. The room went oddly quiet for a beat. My husband corrected her calmly, like this wasn't worth escalating. She brushed it off. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. I felt that familiar internal shift, the one where you realize someone just tried to score a point at your expense. I asked her lightly at first where she studied. She named a campus with confidence. Big name, impressive on paper. And then the thought slipped out before I could fully stop it. I asked how she'd ended up using that degree. Not cruel, not loud, just direct. The air changed instantly. She didn't respond. Her face tightened. The conversation moved on, but everyone felt it. You know that silence, the one that says something just broke. Later I found out she told my husband I'd crossed a line, that I embarrassed her. That I should know better. That part stung more than the comment itself. We ended up talking on the phone. Hours later, after the house was quiet and the adrenaline wore off, the conversation wasn't explosive. It was tired. Defensive at first, then softer. She admitted she felt judged. I admitted I felt dismissed. We both apologized, even if neither of us felt entirely wrong. When we hung up, I sat there thinking about how fast things escalate when pride gets involved. About how some people can dish out a dig but freeze when one comes back their way. About how family dynamics turn small moments into big emotions. Nothing was ruined. No relationships shattered, but something shifted. I learned that night that calling out a subtle insult doesn't make you cruel, and apologizing to keep peace doesn't automatically make you guilty either. Sometimes it just means you chose calm over chaos. So no, I don't think I was the villain in that room. I think I just didn't stay quiet when someone expected me to. The first crack didn't come from a fight. It came from a can opening in my kitchen. Tuesday morning, quiet apartment, sun barely up. The cleaner had just finished the living room. I heard the soft hiss of a soda tab and thought nothing of it. She'd been coming by for years, reliable, invisible in the way good help often is. She worked, paid. Life stayed clean. That tiny sound changed everything. That evening, my girlfriend walked in, spotted the empty can in the recycling, and froze. Her face tightened like she'd uncovered evidence of a crime. She didn't ask a question. She delivered a verdict. Her tone flipped the room cold. Suddenly, this wasn't about a drink. It was about standards, about respect, about what kind of man I was becoming. I laughed at first, not because it was funny, because it felt unreal. I explained it casually. The cleaner sometimes grabbed a drink, sometimes toasted bread while the vacuum ran. Always asked, always polite, always gone before lunch. 2 years, 0 problems. That's when the language changed. Now, I was being judged, lazy, soft, dependent, she said. Real adults didn't outsource basic life skills. She said I was being taken advantage of. She said it looked bad, not to her friends. To her, I remember thinking how strange it was that a spotless apartment had suddenly become proof of my failure. I told her I didn't see the issue. I worked long hours. I paid fairly. The place stayed in order. This wasn't neglect. It was maintenance. That answer didn't land. The conversation escalated fast. Her voice sharpened. She said it wasn't about the cleaner. It was about me needing someone else to handle my mess. She said it made her feel like she was dating a teenager with a credit card. That one stung. I felt irritation rise, then something heavier, confusion. We weren't talking about values anymore. We were talking about control, dressed up as concern. I pushed back. Calmly I said this was my home, my choice, a small luxury I'd earned. I wasn't firing someone who did honest work because it offended an image in her head. Silence followed. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that waits to see if you'll fold. I didn't. The next day, the tension sat between us like clutter. She brought it up again, but sharper. Less discussion, more demand. She said she needed a partner who handled his own life. She said this was embarrassing. She said if I couldn't see how wrong this was, that said everything. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about professionalism. This wasn't about soda. This was about obedience. I told her evenly that the cleaner stayed, that my boundaries weren't negotiable. That disagreement didn't give either of us the right to issue ultimatums. Her response came quick and clean. She packed a bag. She said she couldn't respect someone who lived like this. She said she needed more from a man. She left the key on the counter like punctuation. The door shut harder than it needed to for a moment. The apartment felt too quiet. I stood there wondering how a relationship unraveled over something so small. Then I realized it wasn't small at all. It was the first time I didn't bend. The following week, the cleaner came as usual. Same routine, same efficiency. She asked if I wanted anything restocked. I said no, just smiled. The place looked great. What surprised me wasn't relief. It was clarity. I wasn't abandoned because I hired help. I was discarded because I wouldn't surrender agency. The soda wasn't the issue. The toast wasn't the issue. The issue was that I made a choice without asking permission. In the end, my home stayed clean, my boundaries stayed intact, and the person who couldn't tolerate that removed herself. Some losses don't leave a mess behind. They take one with them. That was one of those. The first warning sign was the sound of a trunk slamming shut before the oven was even turned off. Thanksgiving hadn't officially started, and someone was already packing food. I hadn't invited her. That part matters. We'd planned a smaller dinner this year. Fewer people, less chaos. Peace, for once. Then the doorbell rang. No text, no call. Just her standing there with a wide smile and an empty tote bag already hanging from her shoulder. My stomach dropped. She swept past me like she owned the place, complimented nothing, asked no questions, went straight to the kitchen and started hovering. Watching every dish like it was inventory, I tried to ignore it. I told myself to stay calm. It's a holiday. Pick your battles. That lasted about 10 minutes. She edged her way to the front of the serving line before anyone else had a plate. Reached for containers she hadn't brought but somehow expected. Started stacking portions that looked suspiciously like they were meant for a week, not a meal. I caught my husband's eye. He looked away. My thoughts raced. Do I let this go? Do I pretend not to see it? Or do I finally stop pretending this behavior is normal? I stepped in. Quietly at first, I said everyone would eat before leftovers were touched. I said we'd divide things later. I physically moved the containers back into the cabinet. The room went still. Her smile vanished. Her voice rose just enough to cut. She accused me of embarrassing her. Said I was treating her like a thief. Said family doesn't ration food. I felt heat climb my neck. I wasn't loud. I wasn't rude. I was firm. I told her she could take a small plate home. One, that was it. That's when she exploded. She demanded an apology. Right there. In front of everyone. Claimed I'd disrespected her in my own house. Claimed she'd never been spoken to like this. I waited, genuinely, for my husband to say something. He didn't, so I said no, calmly, clearly. I said I wasn't apologizing for setting boundaries. I said the conversation was over. She stormed out shortly after, muttering about gratitude and loyalty. The door shut. Plates clinked. Dinner resumed, but the air felt thick. Later that night, my husband went quiet. One-word answers. No eye contact. Like I'd ruined something sacred instead of stopping a freezer raid that hurt more than her outburst. Days passed. The silence stayed. Finally, I asked him if he was really upset with me for not apologizing. He said I could have handled it better, that it was his mother. That I should have let it go. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about food. It never was. It was about whose comfort mattered more, hers at the expense of everyone else, or mine in my own home. I didn't yell. I didn't escalate. I didn't back down either. The leftovers were gone by Sunday. The tension wasn't, but something shifted. I realized I wasn't the villain for saying enough. I was just the first person who finally did. And if protecting basic boundaries makes me the problem, then maybe the problem was never the food at all.